The California sun rose like molten gold over Camp Pendleton, casting long shadows across the massive parade ground. 5,000 soldiers stood in perfect formation, their uniforms crisp, boots polished to mirror shine. The air hummed with anticipation. Today's Joint Forces promotion ceremony would be the largest in a decade, bringing together Marines, Navy, Army, and Air Force personnel under one command. Admiral Marcus Brennan arrived exactly 15 minutes early, as he always did. At 58 years old, he was a towering figure in the Marine Corps, 6'3", broad-shouldered with silver hair and a chest so heavy with medals it seemed to weigh him down. But Brennan didn't walk, he strutted. Every step announced his presence, his authority, his absolute certainty that he was the most important person in any room he entered. "Make way," his aide barked unnecessarily as they pushed through the gathering crowd near the VIP entrance. Junior officers and enlisted personnel scattered like startled birds. Brennan didn't acknowledge them. To him, anyone below the rank of colonel might as well have been furniture. "General Kovacs is running late, sir," his aide informed him nervously. "She asked if you could review the ceremony program." Brennan grunted, snatching the folder without a thank you. His eyes scanned the guest list with disdain. "Too many. We're giving out promotions like candy these days. In my time, you had to earn your rank through blood and—" He never finished the sentence. A woman in civilian clothes, jeans, a simple black jacket and worn sneakers, was hurrying through the crowded corridor carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was petite, maybe 5'5", with dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail. Her face was unremarkable at first glance, the kind that could disappear in a crowd. Which was exactly the point. Sarah Chen was running late. Naval Special Warfare Command had requested she attend the ceremony low profile, meaning no dress uniform, no fanfare, no attention. Just observe, they'd said. Network quietly with the Joint Task Force commanders. Standard protocol for someone in her position. She'd stopped to grab coffee for herself and Major General Kovacs, a small courtesy that now proved catastrophic. As she rounded the corner near the VIP entrance, her shoulder clipped someone solid. The coffee cups lurched. Hot liquid splashed outward in an arc. Time seemed to slow. The dark stain spread across Admiral Brennan's immaculate white service uniform like spilled ink on pristine paper. Steam rose from the fabric. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Chen's training kicked in immediately. Assess, analyze, respond. She saw the rank insignia, Admiral, Marine Corps. She calculated apologies, solutions, damage control. "Sir, I'm so sorry You clumsy brat." Brennan's roar could have shattered glass. His face flushed crimson, veins bulging in his neck. Soldiers 50 feet away turned to stare. The carefully orchestrated pre-ceremony bustle ground to a halt. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Spit flew from his mouth as he advanced on her. "Do you have any concept of who I am? This uniform cost more than you make in a month, you incompetent." "Sir, it was an accident," Chen said quietly, maintaining eye contact. Her voice was calm, measured. "I'll cover any cleaning costs, I apologize." But Brennan was beyond reason. Years of unchecked authority, of never being told no, of watching lesser officers scramble at his displeasure had created a monster. In his mind, this civilian contractor, this nobody, had committed an unforgivable offense. She had embarrassed him, made him look foolish in front of his subordinates. "An accident." He stepped closer, towering over her. "You're a disgrace. How did someone as incompetent as you even get on this base? Who authorized your access? I'll have you blacklisted from every military installation in." "Admiral, perhaps we should." His aide began nervously. "Silence." Brennan's hand shot out, finger jabbing toward Chen's face. "You will apologize properly, on your knees, right now, in front of everyone." The crowd that had gathered was now at least 200 strong. Soldiers, officers, civilian contractors, all frozen in horror at what they were witnessing. Several MPs had appeared at the edge of the crowd, uncertain whether to intervene when an admiral was involved. Chen's expression never changed. "Sir, I've apologized. I'll pay for." The slap came without warning. Brennan's open palm connected with the left side of Chen's face with a crack that echoed across the parade ground like a rifle shot. Her head snapped to the right. The force would have dropped most people, but Chen's legs remained steady, rooted. Years of combat training, of taking hits from enemy combatants, had taught her body how to absorb impact. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was supposed to be home. Blood welled at the corner of her mouth where her teeth had cut the inside of her cheek. A red handprint bloomed across her pale skin. The crowd gasped collectively, 5,000 soldiers bearing witness to something that should never have happened. Military police moved forward instantly, hands on their weapons. "Sir, step back," the senior MP commanded. "Ma'am, are you?" Chen raised her hand. The gesture was small but absolute. "Stop." The MPs froze. Slowly, deliberately, Chen reached up and touched her split lip. Her fingers came away red. She looked at the blood for a moment, then at Admiral Brennan. Her eyes were dark, bottomless, and absolutely calm. There was no anger there, no fear, just a vast, oceanic emptiness that made Brennan take an involuntary step backward. "You're going to regret that," someone in the crowd whispered. Chen said nothing. She simply held Brennan's gaze for 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Then she turned and walked away, her gait steady and unhurried. The crowd parted before her like the Red Sea. Blood dripped from her chin onto the concrete, leaving a trail of crimson dots. Brennan stood there, hands still raised, chest heaving. He looked around at the faces staring at him, hundreds of them. Shock, disgust, horror. He opened his mouth to justify himself, to reassert his authority. But for the first time in his career, no words came. In the stunned silence, a young Marine corporal pulled out his phone. The video he'd just recorded would be in Pentagon inboxes within the hour. And Admiral Marcus Brennan's world was about to come crashing down. The ceremony was ruined before it even began. 5,000 soldiers stood in formation, but nobody was paying attention to the stage being prepared. Every eye tracked the direction Sarah Chen had walked. Every mouth whispered. Every phone buzzed with urgent texts, calls, and video shares that would make this moment immortal. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reynolds, a 12-year Marine veteran, leaned close to his squad mate. "Did you see her face? She didn't even flinch." "Brennan hit her hard enough to drop a grown man," Corporal Jennifer Wu whispered back. "But she just walked away, like it was nothing." "That's because it was nothing to her." The voice came from Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Bull Patterson, a grizzled Force Recon Marine with 23 years of service. His weathered face was pale, eyes distant. Christ almighty, he has no idea what he just did. "What do you mean, Gunny?" Reynolds asked. Patterson's jaw worked silently for a moment. "That woman, I've seen her before, 3 years ago, joint operation in Syria." He pulled out his phone with trembling hands, scrolling through encrypted files. "We were pinned down by ISIS fighters in Raqqa, 60 hostiles, 8 of us. We were calling in our grid coordinates for airstrikes, figured we'd die fighting. Then she appeared out of nowhere, alone." "Alone?" Wu's eyes widened. "Ghost," Patterson breathed the word like a prayer. "That's what they called her. Navy SEAL, took out 15 tangos in 12 minutes. Silent, surgical, like a damn wraith. Saved all our lives." He looked up at them, his expression grim. "That civilian Brennan just hit. That's Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, the ghost of DEVGRU." The word spread like wildfire through the formation. "No way. You're lying. Ghost is real. I heard she killed 30 Taliban with just a knife. My buddy at SEAL Team 3 said she doesn't exist. She's just a myth." "Myth?" I saw the after-action report from Somalia. 47 hostages, 1 operator, ghost. Within minutes, phones were out across the entire parade ground. Encrypted military forums exploded with activity. Junior officers texted their commanders. Senior NCOs made urgent calls. The video of the slap was already circulating through secure channels, and with it came a name that made hardened warriors stop in their tracks. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, call sign Ghost. Backstage in the VIP area, Major General Patricia Kovacs was having the worst morning of her 30-year military career. Her phone had been ringing non-stop for the last 7 minutes. Pentagon, NAVSPCWAR, SOCOM, the Secretary of the Navy himself. She ignored them all and grabbed Admiral Brennan by his coffee-stained uniform, pulling him into a private conference room. His aide tried to follow, but she slammed the door in his face. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Her voice was deadly quiet. Brennan straightened his uniform indignantly. "I disciplined an incompetent civilian contractor who—" "She's not a contractor." Kovacs's roar made him flinch. "Tell me you didn't just assault Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen. Please, Marcus, tell me I'm wrong." "Lieutenant Commander," Brennan's confidence wavered. "She was in civilian clothes, no identification. How was I supposed to?" Kovacs threw her tablet at him. He caught it fumbling, nearly dropping it. On the screen was a military personnel file, heavily redacted, black bars covering most of the text. But what remained was enough to drain the blood from his face. CHEN Sarah M. Rank Lieutenant Commander 04. Branch United States Navy. Specialty Naval Special Warfare Development Group DEVGRU. Security Clearance TSSCI. Decorations Navy Cross Silver Star X2, Bronze Star X3, Purple Heart X2. The list went on and on. Special operations personnel often travel in civilian clothes for security reasons, Kovacs said, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. She's here at the request of NAVSPCWAR to observe Joint Task Force integration. She has more combat deployments than most Marines will see in their entire career. And you, she pointed at him like a weapon. You just assaulted her in front of 5,000 witnesses. Brennan's hand trembled. I didn't know, she didn't identify herself. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Kovacs pulled out her own phone, showing him the video that was already going viral through military channels. You called her a brat. You demanded she kneel. You struck a superior officer in front of an audience. There's no misunderstanding here, Marcus. There's only consequences. She's Navy. I'm a Marine Corps Admiral, the chain of command. Doesn't protect you from assault charges. Kovacs's professional composure finally cracked. My God, Marcus, even if she was a civilian, even if she was a private, what you did was criminal. But she's not. She's a decorated SEAL who saved more lives than you've commanded soldiers. And now, she sat down heavily. Now we have to figure out how to contain this disaster before it destroys both our careers. Brennan's face had gone from red to gray. I'll apologize, privately. We can make this go away. Kovacs laughed bitterly. Make it go away, there are 5,000 witnesses. The video is already at the Pentagon, and you clearly don't understand who you're dealing with. She pulled up another file. Operation Crimson Dawn, Somalia, 47 hostages held by al-Shabaab militants. The president ordered a rescue mission. Command said it would take a platoon. She did it alone. Alone, Marcus. That's impossible. Tell that to the 47 Americans who came home alive. Kovacs stood. She's been offered book deals, movie contracts, speaking tour. She's turned them all down. She serves quietly, humbly. And you publicly humiliated her. Brennan sank into a chair, his medals suddenly feeling like chains around his neck. What happens now? Now, Kovacs headed for the door. Now I go find Lieutenant Commander Chen and beg her not to press charges, and you start praying she's more merciful than you were. Across the base, in temporary quarters assigned to visiting officers, Sarah Chen sat on a narrow bed. The room was Spartan, a desk, a chair, a mirror. She'd requested nothing more. She pressed a bag of ice against her swelling jaw, wincing slightly. The face in the mirror looked back at her, split lip, red handprint, dried blood at the corner of her mouth. She'd taken worse. Taliban bullets, shrapnel, a knife wound in Yemen that should have killed her. But those had been enemies, warriors, men who faced her on a battlefield. Admiral Brennan had struck her at home, surrounded by her own people, in front of thousands who'd sworn the same oath she had. Her phone buzzed. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, the Secretary of the Navy, her commander at DEVGRU, former teammates, all offering support, demanding justice, asking what she needed. She turned the phone face down and returned to the ice pack. There was a soft knock at the door. "Commander Chen, it's General Kovacs, may I come in?" Chen didn't answer immediately. She studied her reflection one more time. Then she stood, walked to the door, and opened it. Kovacs's face fell when she saw the bruising. "Oh, Sarah." "Ma'am," Chen's voice was steady, professional. "What can I do for you?" "What can you do for me?" Kovacs shook her head in disbelief. "Sarah, I'm here to ask what we can do for you. Medical attention, legal counsel, whatever you need. Admiral Brennan will face consequences, I promise you that." Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I want the truth, ma'am. How many others?" "What? How many others has he done this to? How many complaints were buried? How many soldiers suffered because men like him are too important to discipline?" Kovacs closed her eyes. "I don't know, but I'll find out." "Good," Chen touched her swollen jaw, "because this isn't about me anymore. It's about every service member who comes after me." She stepped back and closed the door, leaving General Kovacs standing in the hallway, carrying the weight of institutional failure on her shoulders. Inside, Sarah Chen returned to her bed and picked up her phone. She scrolled through the messages until she found one from her former SEAL team commander, Vice Admiral James Reeves. It contained only 3 words. "We stand ready." Chen allowed herself a small, grim smile. The war had just begun, 5 years earlier, Mogadishu, Somalia. The Black Hawk helicopter descended through darkness, rotors chopping the humid African air. Inside, Sarah Chen checked her weapon for the 3rd time. HK-416 rifle, suppressor attached, 4 extra magazines. Beside her sat 7 other SEALs, faces painted, eyes hard. "Ghost, this is command." The voice crackled in her earpiece. "Intel update. Hostage count confirmed at 47 American contractors. Hostiles estimated at 200 al-Shabaab militants. They're heavily armed. RPGs, machine guns, the works." Lieutenant Chen glanced at her team leader, Commander Jake "Hammer" Morrison. His expression was grim. 8 operators against 200. The math didn't work. "What's the call, Command?" Morrison asked. There was a long pause. Then, "Abort mission, repeat, abort. We're calling in airstrikes at dawn. Acceptable losses." "Acceptable losses," Chen's voice was ice. "Sir, those are Americans down there." "Lieutenant, those are 47 casualties versus 8. I won't trade your lives for theirs. Return to base. That's an order." The helicopter banked left, beginning its return trajectory. Chen looked out at the compound below, a fortress of concrete walls, guard towers, and armed men. Somewhere inside, 47 people were waiting to die. She made her decision in 3 seconds. "I'm going in," she said quietly, standing and moving toward the door. "Chen, sit down," Morrison grabbed her arm. "That's a suicide mission." She looked at him with those dark, bottomless eyes. "Then it's a good thing I'm already dead." She keyed her radio. "Command, this is Ghost. Going dark. See you on the other side." Before anyone could stop her, she stepped backward out of the helicopter into the night sky. Present day, the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. Admiral Douglas Hartwell, Chief of Naval Operations, stared at his computer screen in disbelief. The video had been played 17 times in the last hour. Each viewing made him angrier. "Tell me this is fake," he said to his aide. "Sir, it's verified. Multiple angles. 5,000 witnesses. Admiral Brennan struck Lieutenant Commander Chen at approximately 7:45 hours this morning." Hartwell's fist came down on his desk like a hammer. Sarah Chen, the ghost, one of the finest warriors this country has ever produced, and some pompous Marine admiral treats her like trash. He stood, packing. "Get me the Secretary of the Navy, now, and pull Chen's complete service record, unredacted." "Sir, her file is classified at the highest levels. Even you would need." "I have the clearance." Hartwell's roar could be heard 3 offices down. "That woman has saved more American lives than most generals will ever command. I want every mission, every medal, every citation. If we're going to war over this, I want ammunition." The aide fled. Hartwell returned to the video, watching it one more time. The casual cruelty of Brennan's slap, the blood on Chen's face, but most haunting was her expression, that complete, eerie calm. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of operators who'd been to hell and back so many times they'd forgotten what fear felt like. His computer pinged. A file appeared, Operation Crimson Dawn Somalia Hostage Rescue. Hartwell opened it and began to read. With each paragraph, his jaw dropped further. 5 years earlier, Mogadishu, Somalia continued. Chen's parachute deployed at the last possible moment, the canopy snapping open just 50 feet above the compound wall. She landed in shadow, already moving before her feet touched ground. The chute was cut away and buried in seconds. 2 guards stood at the east wall, smoking cigarettes and laughing. They never saw her coming. 2 suppressed shots. Both men dropped silently. Chen moved like smoke through the compound. Her heartbeat was steady at 60 beats per minute, the same as when she was sleeping. This was her element. This was where she belonged. Guard tower, 3 hostiles. She scaled the exterior ladder in seconds. Knife work. Silent, professional, 3 more down. The hostages were being held in the main building's basement. Intel had been accurate about that, at least. But between Chen and that basement were approximately 70 armed militants. She smiled behind her mask. Good, she hated easy. The next 12 minutes would become legend in special operations circles. Chen moved through that compound like a phantom, appearing from shadows, striking without warning, vanishing before bodies hit the ground. Suppressed gunfire, blade work, hand-to-hand combat when necessary. She cleared the first floor in 4 minutes, 8 tangos down. The second floor took 3 minutes, 12 more eliminated. By the time she reached the basement door, the compound was in chaos. Militants fired at shadows, hitting each other in the confusion. Chen breached the basement door. Inside, 47 terrified Americans cowered against walls while 5 guards trained weapons on them. She assessed the room in milliseconds. 5 targets, 47 civilians. Margin of error, 0. She opened fire. 5 seconds, 5 shots, 5 dead terrorists. U.S. Navy, she called out. Stay down and follow my orders. An older man, covered in bruises, stared at her in disbelief. There's only one of you. That's all you need. Chen reloaded. Now move, we have 30 seconds before this place becomes a shooting gallery. She led all 47 hostages out through a route she'd cleared, using smoke grenades and diversionary tactics to create chaos. By the time the remaining militants realized what was happening, Chen and the hostages were already outside the compound perimeter. The extraction helicopter arrived 8 minutes later. Commander Morrison stared at her as she helped load the last hostage aboard. How was all he could say. Chen shrugged. They had more guns, I had more motivation. The president awarded her the Navy Cross. She attended the ceremony, accepted the medal, and never spoke of it again. Present-day Camp Pendleton, California. News of Chen's identity spread through military installations worldwide within hours. Social media erupted. Veterans groups mobilized. The hashtag #JusticeForGhost trended nationally. In her temporary quarters, Chen's phone rang for the 100th time. This time she answered. "Commander Chen speaking." "Sarah, it's Admiral Hartwell." His voice was gentle. "I've been reading about Somalia, about Yemen, about all of it. My God, Sarah, what you've done for this country." "Sir, I was doing my job." "Your job?" Hartwell laughed bitterly. "You saved 47 lives against impossible odds. You've conducted more successful operations than most SEAL teams accomplish in their entire existence, and Admiral Brennan struck you like you were nothing." Chen touched her swollen jaw. "What happens now, sir?" Now we give you justice. But I need to know, what do you want? We can make this disappear, quiet settlement, transfer Brennan somewhere remote, or," he paused, "or we can burn it all down. Full investigation, public tribunal, complete transparency." Chen was quiet for a long moment. Through her window, she could see Marines drilling on the parade ground. Young men and women who'd sworn the same oath she had, who deserved better than a system that protected bullies and punished victims. "I want accountability," she said finally. "Not just for me, for everyone. Every soldier who's been abused by people who think rank makes them untouchable." "That's going to be a war, Sarah. Brennan has powerful friends, senators, defense contractors. They'll come after you." Chen thought of Somalia, of 200 militants versus one operator, of impossible odds. "Sir, with respect, I've survived worse." Hartwell smiled on the other end of the line. "I believe you have. All right, Commander, you want war. Let's give them war." After she hung up, Chen stood and walked to the mirror. The bruise had darkened to deep purple. Her lip was swollen, but her eyes were clear, focused, determined. She'd faced terrorists, warlords, and enemy combatants across 3 continents. She'd survived ambushes, firefights, and missions that should have killed her a dozen times over. Admiral Marcus Brennan had no idea what he'd unleashed. Ghost was going hunting. And this time the enemy wore stars on his shoulders. 2 weeks later, Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia. The military courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Every seat filled with officers, enlisted personnel, legal observers, and media representatives. Outside, protesters lined the streets, some supporting Brennan, others demanding justice for Chen. The nation had divided itself over a single slap that represented decades of systemic failure. Admiral Marcus Brennan sat at the defense table, flanked by 3 expensive civilian lawyers and 2 military attorneys. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing defiant. He'd spent the last 2 weeks preparing his strategy: deny, minimize, counterattack. His lawyers had assured him this would blow over. It always did. Across the aisle sat Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen. She wore her navy dress whites, her chest decorated with ribbons that told a story of valor most people couldn't comprehend. The bruise on her face had faded to yellow-green, but it was still visible. She'd refused makeup. "Let them see what he did," she'd told her lawyer. The military judge, Rear Admiral Catherine Morrison, entered. Everyone rose. "Be seated," Morrison commanded. "This tribunal is convened to investigate charges of assault, conduct unbecoming an officer, and abuse of authority against Admiral Marcus Brennan. Commander Chen, as the plaintiff, you have the floor." Chen's military attorney, Captain Rachel Torres, stood. "Your Honor, we will demonstrate through witness testimony and evidence that Admiral Brennan's actions on October 15th were not an isolated incident, but part of a decades-long pattern of abuse enabled by institutional corruption." Brennan's lead attorney, Marcus Webb, a former Marine colonel turned defense lawyer, shot to his feet. "Objection! This tribunal is about a single incident. My client's past service record is irrelevant." "Overruled," Morrison said coldly. "Pattern of behavior is absolutely relevant. Proceed, Captain Torres." Torres nodded. "The prosecution calls Corporal Maria Sanchez." A young woman in marine dress blues walked to the witness stand. She couldn't have been more than 23 years old. Her hands trembled as she raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth. "Corporal Sanchez," Torres began gently, "how do you know Admiral Brennan?" "I was assigned to his command staff at Camp Lejeune, ma'am, 3 years ago." "Can you describe your experience serving under Admiral Brennan?" Sanchez's voice broke. "He called me stupid every day, said women had no place in the Marines. One time I filed a report incorrectly, a simple mistake, and he threw a coffee mug at my head. It missed, but—" she touched her temple. "He said if I reported it, he'd ruin my career, so I didn't." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Morrison's gavel cracked down. "Order." "Why didn't you report it?" Torres asked. "Because I saw what happened to Lieutenant Davis when she reported him." Sanchez's tears flowed freely now. She filed a formal complaint about his harassment. 2 months later, she was transferred to a supply depot in Alaska. Her career was destroyed. "Admiral Brennan told us at a staff meeting that complainers don't advance in my command." We all got the message. Brennan's face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the table edge. Torres continued, "Thank you, Corporal, no further questions." Webb stood for cross-examination. "Corporal Sanchez, did Admiral Brennan ever physically strike you?" "No, sir." "Did you seek counseling for these alleged incidents?" "No, sir, I was afraid." "Just answer the question. So there's no medical record, no formal complaint, no documentation. Just your word about events from 3 years ago." "Objection," Torres shouted. "Counsel is badgering the witness." "Sustained," Morrison ruled. "Mr. Webb, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt." But the damage was done. Webb had planted doubt. He returned to his seat confident. Torres called her next witness. "The prosecution calls Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez." A Navy officer with 20 years of service took the stand. His jaw was tight, eyes haunted. "Commander Rodriguez, what is your relationship to this case?" "I witnessed the incident at Camp Pendleton. I was there when Admiral Brennan struck Commander Chen." "Please describe what you saw." Rodriguez's voice was steady but filled with barely contained anger. "The Admiral was berating her, calling her incompetent, demanding she kneel in front of everyone. When she refused, he struck her across the face. Hard. I've been in combat. I know what violence looks like. That was assault, plain and simple." "What did Commander Chen do?" "Nothing." Rodriguez shook his head in amazement. "She just stood there bleeding and looked at him. Then she walked away. Most disciplined thing I've ever seen, because if someone had hit me like that—" he trailed off. Torres pulled up a tablet. "Your Honor, I'm entering into evidence video footage from 17 different sources, security cameras, personal phones, body cameras from military police, all showing the same incident from different angles." The screens around the courtroom lit up. The slap played in high definition. The sound echoed through the chamber. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some people looked away. Others leaned forward, transfixed by the violence. On screen, Chen's head snapped to the side. Blood appeared at her lip, but her legs never buckled. Her eyes never left Brennan's face. "Stop the video," Morrison ordered. Her face was pale. "I've seen enough." Webb stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client admits he made physical contact with Commander Chen. However, we contend this was a reflexive reaction to extreme provocation and disrespect. Commander Chen, despite her decorated service, was out of uniform in a secure military facility. She failed to identify herself as an officer. She showed no respect for my client's rank. In the heat of the moment. She's a SEAL operating under special protocols." Torres interrupted. "Special operations personnel are authorized to maintain low profiles. She had proper identification and clearance, which she failed to present. Because your client didn't give her the chance. He struck her within 30 seconds of their encounter." Morrison's gavel silenced them both. Enough, Mr. Webb, your client's reflexive reaction is precisely the problem. Officers are trained to maintain discipline under stress. Admiral Brennan showed none. The tribunal continued for 6 brutal hours. Witness after witness took the stand. A Navy captain who'd watched Brennan shove a female lieutenant. A Marine sergeant who'd been verbally destroyed in front of his unit. A chaplain who'd counseled dozens of Brennan's victims but whose reports mysteriously disappeared. By hour 5, even Brennan's lawyers looked shaken. Finally, Torres called her last witness. The prosecution calls Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen. The courtroom fell silent as Chen walked to the stand. Every eye followed her. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The ghost herself, speaking publicly for the first time. She was sworn in and sat with perfect posture, hands folded calmly in her lap. Torres approached carefully. "Commander Chen, can you describe what happened on October 15th? Chen's voice was clear, steady, without emotion. "I was carrying coffee. I accidentally bumped into Admiral Brennan. Coffee spilled on his uniform. I apologized immediately and offered to cover cleaning costs." "What was his response?" "He called me a clumsy brat, demanded to know how I was authorized on base, ordered me to kneel and apologize in front of everyone." Chen paused. "When I refused, he struck me." "How did that make you feel?" For the first time, emotion flickered across Chen's face. "Disappointed." "Disappointed?" "Yes, ma'am. I've been shot at by Taliban fighters, stabbed by Al-Qaeda operatives, hunted by warlords across 3 continents. Those were enemies. I expected violence from them." She looked directly at Brennan. "But Admiral Brennan wears the same uniform I do. He took the same oath. He's supposed to be better than our enemies. Instead, he showed me that sometimes the uniform doesn't matter. Sometimes rank becomes a weapon used against those who can't fight back." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "What do you want from this tribunal?" Torres asked. Chen's answer was simple. "Accountability, not just for what he did to me, but for everyone he's hurt over the years. Every soldier who was too afraid to report, every career he destroyed, every person who stayed silent because the system protected him instead of them." She looked at the panel of judges. "I survived his violence, but I'm a SEAL. What about the corporal who isn't trained like me? The private who doesn't have my experience? They deserve better. We all do." When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Except Brennan's. He sat stone-faced, realizing too late that he hadn't struck just any soldier. He'd struck a legend. And legends don't break. Day 7 of the tribunal, the counterattack begins. The morning news cycle exploded with coordinated attacks. 3 major cable networks ran the same narrative simultaneously, and it wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. Tonight we ask, has political correctness gone too far in our military? The host's face filled screens across America. A decorated Marine admiral faces career destruction over what his supporters call a minor disciplinary action. Is this really about justice, or is it about a woke agenda targeting traditional military leadership? In the courtroom, Chen sat impassively as her phone buzzed with alerts. Her lawyer, Captain Torres, showed her the headlines. SEAL commander or victim. Critics question Chen's motives. Defense sources. Chen refused to identify herself as officer. Was Admiral Brennan set up? New questions emerge. They're coming after you, Torres whispered. Brennan's people have mobilized. Chen nodded slowly. She'd expected this. In warfare, when conventional tactics fail, the enemy adapts. Brennan was adapting. The courtroom doors opened. Senator Richard Howarth strode in, his presence commanding immediate attention. At 65, he chaired the Senate Armed Services Committee and controlled billions in defense spending. He took a seat directly behind Brennan's defense table, a clear message of support. Beside him sat 3 more senators, 2 retired 4-star generals, and representatives from major defense contractors. The power structure of the military-industrial complex, a assembled to protect one of their own. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. Senator Howarth, this is a closed tribunal. With respect, Your Honor, as chairman of the committee that oversees military justice reform, I have every right to observe these proceedings. His smile was political steel. I'm here to ensure fairness. The implicit threat hung in the air. Challenge me and your funding disappears. Morrison had no choice. Very well, be seated. Brennan's lead attorney, Marcus Webb, stood with renewed confidence. Your Honor, the defense calls Dr. Patricia Henning, forensic psychologist. A woman in her 50s took the stand, credentials impressive, demeanor professional. Webb approached her carefully. Dr. Henning, you've reviewed the evidence in this case. I have. In your professional opinion, was Admiral Brennan's reaction consistent with acute stress response? Absolutely. The Admiral was preparing for a major ceremony, a high-pressure situation, when someone in civilian clothes without proper identification caused physical damage to his uniform. His amygdala triggered a fight-or-flight response. What we witnessed was an involuntary stress reaction, not malicious intent. Torres shot to her feet. Objection. The Admiral is a trained military officer with decades of experience. He's not some civilian having a panic attack. Dr. Henning is providing expert testimony, Webb countered smoothly. Or does the prosecution not believe in science? The gallery murmured. Morrison's gavel cracked. Overruled. The witness may continue. Dr. Henning leaned forward earnestly. Additionally, I've reviewed Commander Chen's service record, multiple combat deployments, extensive trauma exposure. It's possible her perception of the event was colored by PTSD. What she experienced as assault may have been her own trauma response magnifying a minor physical contact. The courtroom erupted. Chen's face remained expressionless, but Torres looked ready to explode. Objection. This is character assassination disguised as expert testimony. Webb smiled. Is the prosecution suggesting combat veterans can't have PTSD? That seems rather insensitive. It was masterful manipulation. Either admit Chen might be unreliable due to PTSD, or appear to be dismissing a real condition that affected thousands of veterans. Morrison called a recess. In the hallway, Torres paced furiously. They're twisting everything, making you look unstable, making him look like a victim of circumstance. Chen watched through the window as Senator Howarth gave an impromptu press conference. This witch hunt must end. Admiral Brennan has served this nation for 35 years. Are we really going to destroy his legacy over an accident? It's not an accident when there are 17 other victims, Chen said quietly. The media doesn't care about them. They care about the narrative. Tor's phone buzzed. She read the message and paled. 3 of our witnesses just withdrew their testimony. They're being threatened with career consequences. Chen's jaw tightened. Then we fight harder. Day 8, the tide begins to turn. The prosecution's case seemed to be crumbling. 2 more witnesses recanted. The media narrative had shifted completely. Brennan's supporters painted him as a victim of political correctness, while Chen was portrayed as either an unreliable trauma victim or an opportunist seeking attention. Then Vice Admiral James Reeves requested permission to testify. At 62, Reeves was a living legend. Navy Cross, Silver Star, 40 years of service. He'd commanded SEAL teams, carrier strike groups, and currently served as Deputy Commander of U.S. Special Operations Command. When he entered the courtroom in full dress uniform, even Senator Howarth stood out of respect. Reeves took the stand, his bearing that of a man who'd led warriors through hell and brought them home. Torres approached carefully. Admiral Reeves, what is your relationship to Commander Chen? She served under my command in SEAL Team 3. I've known her for 12 years. Can you speak to her character? Reeves turned to face the gallery, his voice carrying the weight of authority. In 2019, my son, Marine Captain Michael Reeves, was part of a convoy ambushed outside Kandahar. His vehicle was hit by an RPG, driver dead, gunner wounded. My son trapped in a burning Humvee with 3 broken ribs and a crushed leg. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Lieutenant Chen was 3 clicks away on a separate operation. She heard the distress call. Against orders, she broke from her mission and ran, not drove, ran 3 kilometers through active fire to reach his position. She pulled my son from that vehicle with one arm while laying down suppressive fire with the other. Then she carried him, a 200-pound Marine in full gear, through 2 kilometers of hostile territory to the extraction point. Reeves's voice cracked. She had 2 broken ribs herself, didn't report it until after my son was medevaced. When I asked her why she risked her life for one Marine, you know what she said. No one breathed. "'Cause that's what we do, sir. We bring our people home." Reeves pulled something from his pocket, his Medal of Honor earned in Vietnam. He held it up. "This medal represents the highest valor our nation can bestow. I earned it saving 8 men under fire. Lieutenant Commander Chen has saved hundreds. She's pulled off operations that will be studied in military academies for decades. And she did it without seeking glory, without demanding recognition, without once compromising her integrity." He turned to face Brennan directly. "So when you question her credibility, when you suggest she's unstable or seeking attention, you're not just insulting her. You're insulting every operator who's served with her, every life she's saved, every mission she's accomplished." Reeves walked deliberately to the defense table. He placed his Medal of Honor directly in front of Brennan. "If she falls," he said, voice like thunder, "we all fall. Because if a warrior of her caliber can be assaulted without consequence, then rank means nothing. Honor means nothing. The uniform means nothing." He turned back to the judges. "I've served this nation for 40 years. I've commanded thousands of sailors and Marines. And I'm telling you now, unequivocally, that Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen is one of the finest officers I've ever known. If you question her, you question my judgment. You question every commander who's ever trusted her with their most dangerous missions." Reeves picked up his medal and pinned it back on his chest. Admiral Brennan struck a superior warrior over spilled coffee. That's not leadership. That's cowardice. And cowards don't deserve to wear our uniform. He snapped to attention, saluted the judge, and walked out. The silence was deafening. Senator Howarth's face had gone white. Brennan stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Even Webb seemed shaken. Chen sat perfectly still, but a single tear tracked down her cheek. Torres leaned close. That just changed everything. Outside, news crews replayed Reeves's testimony. Within an hour, "I Stand With Ghost" was trending worldwide. Veterans organizations released statements of support. Active duty service members posted videos defending Chen. The counterattack had failed. The storm had broken. And Admiral Brennan was drowning. Day 12, the smoking gun. Commander Lisa Grant, a JAG investigator with 15 years of experience, approached the witness stand with a banker's box full of files. Her expression was grim, professional, and absolutely merciless. "Your Honor," she began, "over the past 2 weeks, my team has conducted an extensive investigation into Admiral Brennan's conduct throughout his career. What we've discovered is not just troubling, it's systemic." She pulled out a thick folder. "This contains 23 formal complaints filed against Admiral Brennan over the past 15 years. 23. All buried, dismissed, or lost in administrative processes." Webb shot to his feet. "Objection. These complaints were investigated and found to be unsubstantiated." "Were they?" Grant's voice cut like a blade. She pulled out another document. "Or were they buried by Admiral Brennan's friends in the Inspector General's office?" She handed copies to the judges. "These are internal emails from 2018, showing how Brigadier General Robert Chase personally intervened to dismiss 4 separate complaints against Admiral Brennan. His exact words were, Marcus is too valuable to lose over some hurt feelings. The courtroom erupted. Morrison's gavel barely restored order. Grant continued. Let me present the evidence chronologically. First, Captain Jennifer Martinez, 2015. She pulled up a photograph on the courtroom screens. A woman in her 30s, bright smile, Navy uniform. Captain Martinez was assigned to Admiral Brennan's staff at PACOM headquarters. She filed a complaint alleging that Admiral Brennan threw a coffee mug at her during a briefing, resulting in a concussion. Another image appeared, medical records showing head trauma, ER admission, 7 stitches. The complaint was dismissed because Admiral Brennan claimed she walked into a door. No investigation. No witnesses interviewed. Captain Martinez was transferred to a logistics command in Guam 3 weeks later. Her promotion to major was denied. She left the service in 2017. Webb stood again. Your Honor, this is character assassination. Past incidents have no bearing. They have every bearing. Grant's composure cracked. Because this isn't about one incident. It's about a pattern of violence protected by institutional corruption. She pulled out another file. 2017. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, yes, Mr. Webb, your nephew, filed a complaint alleging Admiral Brennan shoved him against a wall and threatened to destroy his career for questioning an operational decision. Webb's face went pale. His nephew's complaint against Brennan. Everyone in the courtroom turned to stare at him. That complaint was withdrawn 48 hours later, Grant continued coldly. After a phone call from you, Mr. Webb, to your nephew. I have the phone records. You told him that crossing Admiral Brennan would end his military career before it started. Your nephew transferred to the reserve 6 months later. He now works as a civilian contractor, too afraid to speak publicly about what happened to him. Webb sat down heavily, his credibility shattered. Grant wasn't finished. 2019. Petty Officer Second Class David Kim, 22 years old, assigned to Admiral Brennan's security detail. He reported that the Admiral struck him in the face during a deployment to Bahrain for walking too slowly. Medical records show a fractured cheekbone. Another photo appeared. A young Asian man with massive bruising across his face. The report disappeared. Petty Officer Kim was told that if he pursued the complaint, he'd face court-martial for making false statements. He withdrew the complaint. 2 months later, he attempted suicide. He survived, received a medical discharge, and now suffers from severe PTSD. Chen's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. Her face remained composed, but her knuckles were white. Grant pulled out a flash drive. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence security footage from 7 separate incidents spanning 2016 to 2024. The screens flickered to life. The first video showed a hallway at Camp Lejeune. Date stamp, March 15, 2016. Admiral Brennan appeared shouting at a female captain. Then his hand shot out, shoving her against the wall. She stumbled, nearly falling. Brennan walked away without looking back. The second video, a parking lot. Brennan grabbed a young lieutenant by his collar, lifting him off the ground, screaming in his face. Security timestamp showed the encounter lasted 90 seconds. The third video, a conference room. Brennan threw a tablet across the room at a Marine major. It struck the man in the shoulder. The major flinched but didn't react. Brennan continued yelling. Video after video. 7 incidents, 7 victims, all captured on security cameras that malfunctioned or whose footage was accidentally deleted during official investigations. How did you obtain these? Morrison asked. Anonymous source, Your Honor. Someone in the security department who couldn't stomach the cover-ups anymore. The metadata has been verified. These are authentic. The courtroom watched in horrified silence as the pattern became undeniable. This wasn't about one slap. It was about decades of violence, enabled by a system that valued rank over justice. Grant pulled out her final piece of evidence. Medical records from 17 service members who sought treatment for injuries allegedly caused by Admiral Brennan, concussions, broken bones, psychological trauma. She placed a stack of files on the judge's bench. 17 people, their careers threatened, their complaints buried, their pain ignored. She turned to face Brennan directly. Admiral, you didn't just strike Commander Chen. You struck every person in this room who's ever served under an abusive leader. Every soldier who stayed silent because speaking up meant career suicide. Every victim who was told their pain didn't matter because the perpetrator was too important to lose. Senator Howarth stood abruptly and left the courtroom. 2 of the other senators followed. The defense contractors shifted uncomfortably. Brennan's wall of support was crumbling. Grant returned to the prosecutor's table, exhausted but resolute. Torres squeezed her shoulder in solidarity. Webb attempted damage control. Your Honor, while some of these incidents are regrettable, they occurred over many years under high-stress conditions. Admiral Brennan has served this nation for 3 decades. Are we really going to erase that service because of a few unfortunate moments? A few unfortunate moments. The voice came from the back of the courtroom. Petty Officer David Kim stood in the doorway, his face scarred, his eyes haunted. I tried to kill myself because of his unfortunate moment. I wake up every night reliving the feel of his fist against my face. He walked slowly down the aisle. I was terrified to come here, terrified he'd destroy what's left of my life. But then I saw Commander Chen, a Navy SEAL, a legend. If she's brave enough to stand up to him, then so am I. Behind him, others entered. Captain Martinez, Lieutenant Webb, the Marine Major from the video. One by one, Brennan's victims filled the courtroom, no longer silent, no longer afraid. We're here, Kim said, his voice stronger now. All of us. Because Commander Chen showed us that rank doesn't make you untouchable. That justice is possible. That speaking truth isn't career suicide, staying silent is. Chen stood and faced them. These strangers who'd become allies. These victims who'd found their voices. She saluted them, crisp, respectful, full of meaning. They saluted back. Brennan stared at the table, his empire of fear collapsing around him. His lawyers looked defeated. His allies had fled. The evidence was overwhelming. Morrison addressed the court. We'll adjourn until tomorrow for closing arguments, but I want everyone in this room to understand something. Her voice carried absolute authority. This tribunal isn't just about one admiral. It's about whether our military justice system protects predators or victims, whether rank grants immunity or demands higher accountability. She looked at Brennan with undisguised contempt. Tomorrow, we decide which side of history we're on. The gavel fell. Outside, news crews swarmed the victims who'd come forward. Their testimonies would dominate the news cycle. Social media exploded with support. Veterans across the nation shared their own stories of abuse and cover-ups. Chen stood apart from the chaos, watching the sunset paint the sky red and gold. Torres approached quietly. You did it, the lawyer said. You gave them courage. Chen shook her head. They always had courage. They just needed to know they weren't alone. Her phone buzzed. A message from Admiral Hartwell. The entire CNO staff stands with you. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already won. Chen pocketed the phone and walked back toward her quarters. Tomorrow would bring the verdict. But tonight, 17 victims could sleep knowing someone finally listened. That was victory enough. Day 13 final arguments. The courtroom felt different that morning. The air was electric, charged with anticipation. Every seat was filled. Outside, thousands gathered, veterans, active duty personnel, civilians, all waiting for justice. Marcus Webb stood for Brennan's closing argument. His usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by the desperate energy of a drowning man. Ladies and gentlemen of the tribunal, he began, voice strained. Yes, Admiral Brennan made a mistake. In a moment of stress, he reacted poorly. But does one mistake erase 35 years of distinguished service? He's commanded thousands of Marines, led operations that saved American lives, earned medals for valor in combat. He gestured at Brennan, who sat rigid, staring straight ahead. This is a war hero, a leader who's dedicated his life to this nation. Are we really going to destroy him over one regrettable incident? Webb paused, knowing his next words were a gamble. Commander Chen herself is a warrior. She survived combat, torture, near-death experiences. One slap, while inappropriate, is nothing compared to what she's endured. Perhaps we should ask ourselves, is this prosecution really about justice, or is it about making an example of a man who represents traditional military values? The implication was clear. Chen was being used as a political weapon. Captain Torres rose for the prosecution's closing. Her eyes blazed with controlled fury. Mr. Webb asks if one mistake should erase 35 years of service. I answer, this isn't one mistake. It's one mistake we finally have on video. She pointed at the evidence screens. 17 victims, 23 buried complaints, 7 security videos, decades of violence and abuse. She walked toward Brennan. Mr. Webb calls his client a war hero, but what kind of hero beats his own soldiers? What kind of leader uses rank as a weapon against those sworn to follow him? Torres turned to the judges. Admiral Brennan didn't just strike Commander Chen. He struck the very foundation of military discipline. He proved that in his world, rank means you can abuse anyone weaker. That stars on your shoulders grant immunity from consequences. Her voice rose. Commander Chen survived his violence because she's extraordinary. She's a Navy SEAL who's faced down terrorists and warlords. But what about Petty Officer Kim? What about Captain Martinez? What about all the others who weren't trained to absorb violence? They suffered. They broke. Some tried to end their own lives. She placed both hands on the prosecutor's table. This verdict will send a message to every service member in every branch. Either we protect predators or we protect the uniform. There is no middle ground. Torres returned to her seat. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison addressed the panel, 3 flag officers who would decide Brennan's fate. The tribunal will now deliberate. Court is adjourned. 4 hours later. The wait was excruciating. Chen sat in an adjacent room, alone except for Torres. She'd asked for solitude, needing to center herself before the verdict. How do you think it'll go? Torres asked. Chen was quiet for a long moment. I've been in firefights where I was certain I'd die, missions with 0 probability of success. This feels similar. You do what's right and accept whatever comes. You could have walked away, taken the settlement, moved on. And let him do this to someone else. Chen shook her head. I've spent my career protecting Americans from foreign enemies. I won't ignore domestic ones just because they wear our uniform. A knock at the door. A young ensign appeared nervous. Ma'am, the tribunal is ready. The courtroom filled within minutes. Chen took her seat, spine straight, hands folded. Across the aisle, Brennan sat between his lawyers, his face a mask of forced confidence. The 3 judges entered. Rear Admiral Morrison in the center, flanked by Major General Patricia Kovacs and Vice Admiral Thomas Chen. No relation to Sarah, but his presence added gravitas. Morrison's face was unreadable. This tribunal has carefully reviewed all evidence, witness testimony, and arguments. What we've witnessed over the past 2 weeks represents a failure at every level of military leadership. She looked directly at Brennan. Admiral Brennan, please stand. He rose slowly, his lawyers flanking him. You have been charged with assault on a superior officer, conduct unbecoming an officer and gentleman, and systematic abuse of authority. On all charges, Morrison paused, letting the tension build. This tribunal finds you guilty. The courtroom erupted, gasps, shouts. Some cheered, others wept. Morrison's gavel cracked repeatedly until order was restored. The evidence against you is overwhelming and irrefutable, Morrison continued, her voice cold steel. You have brought dishonor to the uniform, betrayed the trust of those who served under you, and enabled a culture of fear and abuse through your actions and the actions of those who protected you. Brennan's face crumbled. His lawyers gripped his arms, holding him upright. Therefore, the tribunal orders the following sentence. You are hereby stripped of your rank, effective immediately. All military honors, decorations, and retirement benefits are revoked. You will receive a dishonorable discharge and will be remanded to civilian authorities for potential criminal prosecution. Morrison's voice grew harder. Furthermore, this tribunal recommends immediate Inspector General investigations into everyone who buried complaints against you. Those who enabled your abuse will face their own reckonings. She turned to Chen. Lieutenant Commander Chen, please stand. Chen rose, her face neutral. You have demonstrated extraordinary courage, not just in combat but in standing against institutional corruption. You've given voice to 17 victims who thought they'd never receive justice. This tribunal and this nation owes you a debt of gratitude. Morrison's severe expression softened slightly. It is the recommendation of this tribunal that you be promoted to the rank of commander, effective immediately, and that you be awarded a Distinguished Service Medal for your actions, both in combat and in defense of military justice. The courtroom exploded in applause. Officers stood. Enlisted personnel cheered. Outside, the crowd roared so loudly it shook the building's windows. Chen saluted. Thank you, Your Honor, but I request one thing. Name it. Use this case to reform the system. Create real protections for those who report abuse. Make accountability mandatory for all flag officers. Ensure that what happened to Petty Officer Kim, Captain Martinez, and all the others never happens again. Morrison nodded slowly. The Secretary of Defense has already ordered a complete review of military justice procedures. Your request will be honored. As the judges departed, MPs moved forward to take Brennan into custody. He looked at Chen one final time, no longer defiant, just broken. I underestimated you, he said quietly. Chen's expression never changed. You underestimated justice. I just made sure it found you. The MPs led him away. 35 years of service ending in handcuffs and disgrace. Outside, Chen was swarmed by reporters, well-wishers, and her fellow victims. Petty Officer Kim embraced her, sobbing. Captain Martinez saluted through tears. One by one, they thanked her. Vice Admiral Reeves pushed through the crowd. He saluted Chen with perfect precision. Damn fine work, Commander. She returned the salute. Couldn't have done it without you, sir. That speech in there, about protecting the uniform, Reeves smiled. That's what makes you a warrior, Chen, not the missions or the medals, the willingness to fight for what's right, even when the enemy is one of us. As the sun set over Norfolk, Chen stood alone for a moment, watching the crowd celebrate. Justice had been served. Brennan would never hurt anyone again. The system had begun to change. But she knew the fight wasn't over. This was just one battle in a much longer war. And Ghost never left a mission incomplete. 6 months later, Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, California. The Pacific Ocean crashed against the shore as dawn broke over the legendary naval amphibious base. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the training compound, watching 30 SEAL candidates struggle through Hell Week. They were exhausted, broken, pushed beyond human limits, but they persevered. Among them were 8 women. 5 years ago, that would have been impossible. Now it was simply reality. Commander Chen, a young instructor, approached, saluting crisply. The new class is assembled for your address. Chen nodded, adjusting her uniform. She now wore the insignia of Special Advisor for Leadership Development and Accountability, a position created specifically after the Brennan case. Her mission: ensure that toxic leadership never again poisoned the ranks. She entered the auditorium where 200 SEAL candidates sat at attention. These weren't just future operators, they were future leaders. What she taught them today would ripple through the military for decades. At ease, she commanded. They relaxed slightly, all eyes fixed on her. Chen walked to the center of the stage, no podium between her and the audience. You're here because you want to be warriors, the best of the best. You've survived cuts, training, pain that would break most people. But I'm not here to talk about physical strength. She touched the scar on her jaw, faint now, but still visible. 6 months ago, a Marine Admiral struck me in front of 5,000 soldiers. He outranked me. He was bigger, stronger, connected to powerful people. By every traditional measure of power, he should have won. The candidates leaned forward, riveted. But he lost, not because I'm special, not because I'm a SEAL. He lost because when given a choice between silence and justice, I chose justice. When offered an easy exit, I chose the hard right over the easy wrong. Chen paced slowly. You're being trained to face enemies overseas, to conduct operations in hostile territory, to protect America from external threats. That training is crucial, but there's another enemy you'll face, one wearing the same uniform: toxic leadership, abuse of power, corruption hidden behind rank and tradition. She stopped, making eye contact with a female candidate in the front row. The warrior's code isn't just about combat, it's about character, integrity, the courage to stand up when standing up costs you everything. Her voice grew stronger. Some of you will become officers, leaders, and when you do, you'll face a choice: protect your career or protect your people. Advance yourself or defend those who can't defend themselves. History is watching. Your subordinates are watching. And I'm telling you now, choose them. Always choose them. Chen pulled out a small object from her pocket, a challenge coin, but this one was different. On one side, the SEAL trident. On the other, 17 names engraved in tiny letters. These are the names of Admiral Brennan's victims who found courage to come forward. Petty Officer Kim, Captain Martinez, all of them. This coin reminds me why I fought, not for glory, not for revenge, for them, and for everyone who comes after. She held it up. When you graduate, you'll receive one of these. When leadership gets hard, when doing the right thing could cost you your career, look at this coin. Remember that true warriors protect the weak, even from other warriors. The auditorium was silent, except for the distant sound of waves. Dismissed. The candidates erupted in applause. Several approached afterward, asking questions, sharing their own stories of toxic leadership. Chen listened to each one, offering guidance and encouragement. Later that afternoon, Chen sat in her small office overlooking the ocean. Her desk held a laptop, a coffee mug, and a framed photo. Her SEAL Team 3 unit taken years ago in Afghanistan. Brothers and sisters in arms, some gone now, all remembered. Her phone buzzed, a news alert. Former Admiral Brat, SCNT and CED, 3 years in federal prison. She clicked the article. After the military tribunal, civilian authorities had prosecuted Brennan for assault. 3 years, not enough for 35 years of abuse, but something. More importantly, his case had sparked a revolution. The article continued. Congress passes Military Justice Reform Act, inspired by Chen case. New mandatory reporting systems, independent investigations of flag officers, protections for whistleblowers, anonymous complaint hotlines. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Chen's phone rang. Admiral Hartwell. Commander Chen, have you seen the news? Yes, sir. 3 years isn't enough, Hartwell said, frustration evident. But the reforms. Sarah, you've changed the entire military justice system. The president called me personally. He wants to meet you, present you with another medal. Chen smiled slightly. With respect, sir, I have enough medals. What I want is for those reforms to actually work, to protect the next petty officer Kim before he tries to kill himself. That's why you're perfect for your current position. We need people like you teaching the next generation. After they hung up, Chen returned to the window. Below, candidates were running the obstacle course, struggling, failing, getting back up, trying again. Her office door opened. Petty Officer David Kim stood there, now a civilian contractor working at the base. His face had healed, though the scars, physical and emotional, remained. "Commander, I wanted to thank you. Again, I got accepted into graduate school, psychology. I want to help other veterans with PTSD." Chen stood and shook his hand. "You're going to save lives, David. Different battlefield, same mission. I couldn't have done it without you. You showed me that victims can become survivors, that survivors can become warriors in their own way." After he left, Chen sat alone, watching the sun descend toward the Pacific horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. She thought about that morning 6 months ago, the slap, the blood, the choice. She'd survived terrorists, warlords, and impossible missions. But standing up to Brennan had been the hardest thing she'd ever done. Not because of physical danger, but because she'd challenged an entire system built on silence and complicity. The system had bent, not broken but bent, toward justice, toward accountability. Her phone buzzed one more time. A message from Captain Martinez. "Just got promoted to Major. Never would have happened without you. Thank you for fighting." Chen smiled, genuinely this time, and typed back, "You fought too. We all did together." As darkness fell, she gathered her things and headed out. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students to inspire, new battles for justice. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of peace. Ghost had been a legend in combat. Now she was something more, a symbol that courage wasn't just about facing enemy fire. It was about standing up when everything told you to stay down, speaking truth when silence was safer, fighting for others when fighting only endangered yourself. The young woman who'd accidentally spilled coffee on an Admiral had sparked a revolution. The warrior who refused to kneel had changed a nation. And Commander Sarah Chen, call sign Ghost, had proven that the strongest warriors aren't those who never fall. They're the ones who rise, no matter how many times they're struck down. She walked into the California night, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The fight was never over. But neither was hope. The end.